The darkness beneath the palace had its own language, dripping water that counted the days, rust that whispered against iron chains, and the soft scratches of rats who'd learned not to fear the prisoners. Lirelei had been fluent in this language for over 3 years, though she'd stopped counting the exact days after the first 1,000. Not that anyone else was counting at all. She pressed her palm against the cold stone wall, feeling the vibrations from the palace above, dancing from the rhythm. Another ball, another celebration in the moon court while she rotted in the catacombs reserved for the pack's greatest disappointments. The wolf-less, the broken, the useless. The silver collar around her throat had long since left permanent marks, its enchantment ensuring that even if she'd had a wolf, which it didn't, could never surface. A precaution for a threat that didn't exist. The irony might have been amusing if it didn't burn every time she swallowed. Still alive down there, empty one? The guard's voice echoed through the feeding slot, using the name they'd christened her with. Empty one, no wolf, no worth, and no point. Lirelei didn't answer. She'd learned that silence frustrated them more than any response. The slot scraped open, and her daily portion skittered across the floor, stale bread and water that tasted of metal. The same meal for her endless imprisonment. She was reaching for the bread when she felt a shift in the air pressure, a change in the darkness itself. The rats fled first, their tiny claws scrambling away into deeper shadows. Then came the sound of footsteps, but not the heavy boots of guards. These were different, deliberate, predatory. Multiple sets of feet descended the forgotten stairs that led to her section of the catacombs. No one used those stairs. They led to the oldest part of the dungeons, the part that connected to the natural cave systems below the mountain, the part that even guards avoided after the last prisoner down here had been found torn apart by something that left claw marks in solid stone. That had been 6 months ago. Since then, Lirelei had been utterly alone with only the darkness for company. "Your Majesty, this is highly irregular." A nervous voice she recognized as Keeper Thorn, the prison warden. Silence. The word cut through the darkness like a blade, and Lirelei's entire body went rigid. That voice, deep, commanding, threaded with barely controlled violence, could only belong to one person, King Ravok Nightbane, the alpha of alphas, the wolf who'd united the fractured packs through blood and dominance. The king who'd never once set foot in these dungeons because nothing here was worth his attention. Light exploded into her cell as someone thrust a torch through the bars. Lirelei threw her arm over her eyes, the sudden brightness feeling like needles after her time in darkness. Through her streaming tears, she saw shapes materializing outside her cage. 3 royal guards in their midnight blue armor, Keeper Thorn wringing his hands, and him. Even through her light blindness, she couldn't mistake that silhouette. 7 feet of pure predatory power, shoulders that blocked the entire corridor, and eyes that, when her vision finally cleared, glowed amber in the torchlight. King Ravok stood before her cell, his head tilted at an angle that was distinctly inhuman, nostrils flared as if scenting the air. "How long has she been here?" His question made Thorn flinch. "Over 3 years, Your Majesty. She was condemned for—" "I didn't ask why." Ravok's eyes never left Lirelei's form. "Open it." "But sire, she's—" The king's head snapped toward Thorn with such sudden violence that the keeper stumbled backward. "Open it." The jingle of keys filled the silence, Thorn's hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. The ancient lock screamed as it turned, rust and disuse making it protest. The door swung open with a groan that seemed to go on forever. Ravok stepped inside, and suddenly the cell felt impossibly small. He had to duck under the low ceiling, his massive frame taking up all the space, all the air. This close, Lirelei could see the scars that decorated his arms' ritual marks from his ascension, battle wounds that told stories of violence. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, wild and untamed like the wolf beneath his skin. He moved closer, each step deliberate, until he was mere inches away. Lirelei pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. His eyes were doing something strange, the amber flickering between human and wolf, his pupils dilating and contracting as if he was fighting for control. Then he inhaled deeply, and the sound that escaped him was neither human nor wolf. It was something primal, something that made every instinct scream at her to run. but there was nowhere to go. Impossible, he breathed, the word barely audible. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her throat, not squeezing, just holding. His thumb pressed against her racing pulse. The silver collar burned between them, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Your Majesty, Thorn ventured from the doorway. Perhaps we should leave. The command reverberated through the stone. All of you. Now. But protocol states. Ravok's eyes flashed fully wolf, and a growl built in his chest that made the walls vibrate. The guards fled, Thorn scrambling after them, the torch abandoned on the floor outside the cell, casting dancing shadows through the bars. Alone now, Ravok's thumb traced the edge of her collar, and everywhere he touched felt like lightning beneath her skin. His other hand rose to her face, fingers tangling in her matted hair, tilting her head back to expose her throat. Those lost years, he murmured, and there was something like rage in his voice. All this time you've been here, and I never knew. His nose skimmed her neck, another inhale that seemed to shake his entire frame. Do you have any idea what you are? I'm nobody, Lirelai whispered, her voice cracked from disuse. I'm useless, empty. I don't even have a liar. The word was soft, dangerous. His teeth grazed her throat, canines longer than they should be. I can smell it on you, in you, hidden so deep even you don't know it's there. I don't understand. Your scent. His voice had gone rough, more growl than words. For 6 months, something has been calling to me. A phantom fragrance driving my wolf insane. I've searched every corner of this kingdom, turned the palace inside out, and all this time, his laugh was bitter, almost broken. All this time you were here, buried in the dark. Mine. That last word sent shock through her system. Yours? I'm not. Oh, but you are. His grip on her throat tightened slightly, possessive but not painful. Every wolf has a mate, little prisoner. One perfect match that calls to their very soul. And you? His eyes met hers, fully wolf now, glowing with an intensity that stole her breath. You're mine. The question is, his mouth moved to her ear, his next words changing everything. Why have they been hiding you from me? And what exactly did they do to make you believe you're powerless? The world tilted wrong. Lirelai's knees buckled, but Ravok's arms caught her before she hit the stone floor, lifting her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. The movement sent his scent washing over her pine forests and thunderstorms and something wild that made her body respond in ways that terrified her. I can't be, she gasped against his shoulder. I can't be anyone's mate. I'm broken. Wolf-less. They tested me. They lied. His voice rumbled through his chest into hers. Everything they told you was a lie. He carried her from the cell, past the sputtering torch, and she caught her first real glimpse of him in proper light. The stories hadn't done him justice. Ravok Nightbane was devastating all sharp angles and barely leashed violence, with silver-streaked scars across his jaw that only enhanced his brutal beauty. But it was his eyes that trapped her amber ring around pupils that held too much intelligence, too much intensity. Where are you taking me? Away from here. He navigated the narrow corridor with predatory grace despite his size. The physician will examine you first. No. The word tore from her throat with surprising force. She twisted in his arms, panic clawing at her chest. Please, not the physicians. They're the ones who... She bit her tongue, but too late. Ravok stopped walking, his entire body going rigid. When he looked down at her, his expression had transformed into something lethal. The ones who... What, Lirelai? She hadn't heard her actual name in so long, it sounded foreign. How do you know my... The ones who what? His roar made dust rain from the ceiling. The tests, she whispered. When I was 15, they said my wolf was corrupted, twisted, that it had to be. Removed. The sound that erupted from Ravok's throat wasn't human. His bones began to crack and shift, partial transformation rippling through him. His canines lengthened, his hands becoming claws where they held her. Removed, he repeated, each syllable dripping venom. They told you they removed your wolf. They saved me. The words came out automatic, rehearsed. Elder Kazek said if they hadn't performed the ritual, my corrupted wolf would have consumed me from the inside. The silver collar keeps it from regenerating, keeps me safe. Kazek. The name came out as pure murder. Elder Kazek ordered this? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from above. Multiple sets, moving fast. Ravok's head snapped up, a snarl building in his chest. Your Majesty, Captain Aldrich's voice carried down the stairs. The Council demands your immediate presence. There's been an incident. The Council can burn. Ravok's voice had gone impossibly deep. Sire, it's about the prisoner. Elder Kazek has invoked the law of reclamation. He says the empty one belongs to... The rest of Aldrich's words were lost in Ravok's roar. He set Lirelei on her feet but kept one arm locked around her waist, holding her against his side as the captain appeared with a contingent of guards. Perfect timing. Ravok's smile was all teeth, all threat. Escort us to the throne room. It seems the council wishes to discuss my mate's imprisonment. The word mate rippled through the guards like a physical blow. Several stepped back, faces paling. Your mate? Captain Aldrich's voice cracked. Your Majesty, surely you're mistaken. The empty one has no wolf. She cannot... Cannot what? Ravok moved so fast Lirelei didn't see it. One moment he was beside her. The next he had Aldrich pressed against the wall, claws at his throat. Cannot be my mate? Cannot be worthy of her king? Continue, Captain. Tell me more about what my mate cannot be. Forgive me, Your Majesty. Aldrich gasped. Ravok released him with a dismissive shove. Take us to the throne room, now. They moved through the palace like a funeral procession. Lirelei had never seen these halls she'd been brought in through the prisoners' tunnels years ago. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. Tapestries depicted the history of the unified packs. Courtiers in silk and velvet pressed themselves against walls as they passed, whispers following in their wake. The empty one. Can't be serious. Elder Kazek won't stand for. Look at her, covered in filth. Ravok stopped so abruptly that Lirelei stumbled. He turned toward the last voice, a lady in emerald silk, with perfectly coiffed hair and cruel eyes. Lady Versa. His voice was silk over steel. You were saying something about my mate? The woman's face drained of color. Your Majesty, you only meant to insult your queen. The words hung in the air like an end executioner's axe. Guards. Lady Versa seems to have forgotten basic courtesy. Perhaps a month in the cells will refresh her memory. No, Your Majesty, please. But the guards were already dragging her away, her silk gown trailing across the floor like spilled wine. The remaining courtiers scattered like frightened birds. You can't just imprison people for... Lirelei started. Watch me. Ravok's hand found the small of her back, urging her forward. Anyone who questions your worth questions mine. That's treason. They reached massive doors carved with wolves mid-hunt. Beyond, Lirelei could hear raised voices, angry arguments. Ravok paused, turning to face her fully. Listen carefully, he said, his hands framing her face. The council will say things, cruel things, untrue things. They'll try to make you doubt, try to make you run. But you need to trust me. Can you do that? I don't even know you. But you feel it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. The pull between us. Your body knows me, even if your mind doesn't yet. He was right. Every cell in her body was screaming that this was right. He was right. That she belonged pressed against him. It made no sense, but her body didn't care about logic. Elder Kazek, she began. Is a dead man walking? Ravok's eyes flashed. He just doesn't know it yet. The doors burst open before she could respond, revealing a circular chamber dominated by a massive throne carved from a single block of obsidian. 6 figures stood before it, the Council of Elders, each representing one of the unified packs, and at their center, silver beard gleaming in the firelight, stood Elder Kazek. Your Majesty, Kazek's voice oozed false concern. Thank the moon you found her. The empty one escaped her cell. We were organizing search parties. Escaped? Ravok's laugh was dark music. From the cell I found her rotting in? The cell where you've kept my mate imprisoned for her entire captivity? The word mate sent shockwaves through the council. Elder Morena actually gasped, her hand flying to her throat. That's impossible, Kazek said smoothly. The creature has no wolf. The corruption was removed. Corruption. Ravok stalked forward, leerily forgotten for the moment. Tell me, Kazakh, what exactly was this corruption? What made a 15-year-old girl so dangerous she needed to be mutilated and buried in the dark? Her wolf was wrong. Kazakh's composure never wavered. It manifested incorrectly, showing signs of what? For the first time, Kazakh hesitated. His eyes flicked to Lirelei, and something like fear flashed across his weathered features. Signs of the old blood, Elder Marina whispered when Kazakh didn't continue. Her wolf, it bore the marks. The marks. Ravok's voice had gone deadly quiet. You mean the marks of the first wolves, the pure bloodline that hasn't manifested in 500 years. It's a curse, Kazakh snarled, composure finally cracking. The last time one of the first wolves walked among us, entire kingdoms burned. They're too powerful, too wild to control. We did what was necessary. You tortured a child because you were afraid. Ravok's partial transformation was accelerating, his spine elongating, his muscles rippling beneath his clothes. You destroyed her wolf because you couldn't control it. And I would do it again. Kazakh raised his staff, silver runes beginning to glow. She's an abomination, a throwback to savage times. The collar keeps her contained, keeps us all safe. The collar. Ravok turned back to Lirelei, his eyes now fully wolf. He crossed to her in 3 strides, and before anyone could protest, his claws were at her throat. But instead of violence, there was delicate precision as he hooked one claw under the silver collar. No! Kazakh lunged forward. You don't know what you're doing. Without the collar, her wolf will... The silver snapped. The collar fell away in pieces, clattering across the marble floor. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Lirelei screamed. Fire raced through her veins. No, not fire. Something older, hungrier. Lirelei's bones began to snap and reshape. But wrong. All wrong. As if her body couldn't remember its proper form after years of suppression. She collapsed, convulsing, her spine arching at an impossible angle. Through the haze of agony, she heard shouting, felt hands trying to hold her down, smelled the metallic tang of her own blood as her fingernails lengthened into claws and tore at the stone floor. What's happening to her? Ravok's voice edged with panic. Her wolf is trying to surface, but it's been caged too long, Elder Marina said. It doesn't know how to. Fix it, his roar shook the windows. We can't. The damage is too severe. She'll tear herself apart from the inside. Lirelei's vision flickered between human and something else, colors too bright, scents too sharp. She could smell everything. Ravok's rage, smoke and copper, Kazakh's fear, sour milk and rotting leaves. And underneath it all, something calling to her from deep within the mountain. Something that smelled like home. The caves, she gasped, blood bubbling on her lips. The caves. She's delirious, Kazakh said quickly. The transformation madness. But Ravok was already scooping her up, her convulsing body cradled against his chest. The old caves beneath the palace, where your kind imprisoned her. His words dripped accusation. That's where she needs to be. Your Majesty, you can't... But he was already running, faster than any human should move, blurring through corridors and downstairs, following some instinct that pulled him deeper into the earth. Lirelei's claws shredded his shirt, drawing blood, but he never loosened his grip. The temperature dropped with each level they descended. Past the dungeons, past the catacombs, into the natural cave system that had existed long before the palace, long before the unified packs, back when the first wolves ran wild and free. The moment they entered the caves proper, something shifted. The crystals embedded in the walls began to glow faint at first, then brighter, responding to their presence. No, not their presence. Hers. Impossible, Ravok breathed. The caves were singing a frequency too low for human ears but perfect for wolves. Lirelei's convulsions eased as the sound washed over her, her body remembering something her mind had forgotten. Put me down, she whispered. He hesitated. Please. Ravok set her on her feet, keeping his hands on her waist to steady her. The moment her bare feet touched the cave floor, the crystals flared brilliant white. Power slammed into her like a physical force, not the weak, twisted thing Kazakh had described, but something vast and ancient and absolutely pure. Her wolf didn't just surface. It exploded from her in a rush of midnight fur and silver light. But this was no ordinary transformation. Where other wolves stood perhaps 3 feet at the shoulder, Lirelei towered at nearly 6. Her fur wasn't the common brown or gray, but pure black shot through with veins of silver that glowed like the crystals around them. Her eyes, when she turned them on Ravok, were violet, the mark of the first wolves that hadn't been seen in half a millennium. By the ancient mothers, Ravok fell to his knees, not in submission, but in awe. You're not just of the old blood, you're their heir. Lirelei's wolf cocked its massive head, studying him with 2 intelligent eyes. When she stepped forward, the crystals pulsed brighter, and Ravok gasped as images flooded his mind, not his memories, but hers, freed from the prison of the collar. He saw a 5-year-old Lirelei making flowers bloom with a touch, 7-year-old Lirelei calling rain during a drought, 10-year-old Lirelei healing a dying wolf with her tears, 13-year-old Lirelei accidentally shifting during a full moon, not into a normal wolf, but into this magnificent creature of legend. And he saw what came next. Kazek's fear, the other elders' horror, the decision to remove what they couldn't control, the ritual that hadn't destroyed her wolf but had buried it so deep she'd believed their lies about being empty, useless, broken. They knew, Ravok snarled, his own transformation rippling through him in response to his rage. They all knew what you were, and they buried you alive rather than... His words cut off as Lirelei shifted back, the transformation smooth as breathing now that her wolf was free. But she didn't emerge unchanged. Her hair, once mousy brown, now gleamed black with silver streaks. Her eyes retained hints of violet around the irises, and on her shoulder blade, visible through her tattered prison shirt, was a mark that made Ravok's breath catch a crescent moon wrapped in thorns, the symbol of the first wolf queen. I remember, she whispered, swaying on her feet. I remember everything, the power, the prophecy, why they were so afraid. What prophecy? She met his eyes, and for the first time since he'd found her, she looked truly afraid. The one that says when the first wolf returns, she'll either unite all packs under one rule or destroy them all. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind them, many footsteps, moving fast. The council had followed, bringing guards, bringing weapons. And there's more, Lirelei said quickly. The prophecy says the first wolf will know her true mate by the mark when they claim each other. He'll bear the same symbol. Kazek knew. That's why he made sure I believed I was worthless. Why he kept me where no one would find me. Because if I ever found my mate, the prophecy would begin. Ravok's eyes glowed with understanding and something else, hunger. And I found you anyway. Your Majesty, Captain Aldrich's voice echoed off the cave walls. Step away from the prisoner. Elder Kazek has invoked emergency protocols. Let them come, Ravok growled, pulling Lirelei against him. Let them all come. The first guards rounded the corner, silver weapons raised, but they stopped dead at the sight of the glowing crystals, the transformed cave, and Lirelei standing there bearing the mark of legend. It's true, one guard whispered. The first wolf has returned. Kazek pushed through them, his staff blazing with power. An abomination has returned. Kill her now before... He never finished the sentence. Lirelei raised her hand, and every crystal in the cave responded, their song becoming a roar. The guards' silver weapons crumbled to dust. Kazek's staff shattered. The very air seemed to bend around her. You stole years from my life, she said, stepping forward. Power radiated from her in waves, making the guards drop to their knees. You made me believe I was nothing. You are nothing, Kazek snarled, but his voice shook. A monster from ancient times that should stay buried. Perhaps. Lirelei smiled, and it was all teeth. But I'm a monster with a mate who happens to be your king. So tell me, Kazek, which one of us do you think is truly powerless now? Ravok moved beside her, his transformation complete, a massive gray wolf with eyes like molten gold. When he threw back his head and howled, it wasn't just a wolf's call, but a king's command. Every wolf in the palace, in the city, in the kingdom would hear it and know. The first wolf had returned, and their king had chosen his queen. But as the echo of his howl faded, Kazek laughed cold and bitter. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've just unleashed. The other kingdoms have been waiting for this, for a sign of weakness, for the prophecy to begin." His eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "By dawn, every rival pack, every enemy of the throne will know the first wolf has returned. They'll come for her, for both of you. And when they do," a blade sprouted from his chest, silver and deadly. Behind him, Elder Morena stood with grim determination. "When they do," she said calmly, "they'll find their queen ready for them." Kazakh crumpled, blood pooling beneath him, but his last words gurgled through bloody lips. "The northern howl already knows. They're coming." As his eyes went dark, a horn sounded from somewhere far above. Not the palace horns, but something older, wilder. A war horn from the northern territories. Liralay's newly awakened wolf stirred, recognizing the sound for what it was, a challenge to her claim, a call for her blood, and the beginning of a war that would determine whether she was salvation or destruction. "How long?" she asked Marina. 3 days, perhaps 4 if the storms slow them." Ravak shifted back to human form, magnificently naked and utterly unconcerned with propriety as he pulled Liralay against him. "Then we have 3 days to complete the mating bond, 3 days to unlock your full power, and 3 days to prepare for war." His mouth found her throat, teeth grazing the spot where a mate mark would go, and Liralay's knees nearly buckled from the sensation. 3 days, she whispered, her wolf rising to meet his. "It took them years to break me. Let's see what I can do to them with 3 days of freedom." The crystals around them pulsed once more, and every wolf in the kingdom felt it, the return of old magic, the promise of change, and the terrifying, exhilarating reality that nothing would ever be the same again. The War Council assembled at midnight in the Hall of Ancestors, where carved stone wolves watched from alcoves with eyes of crystal. Liralay stood beside Ravak's obsidian throne, acutely aware that she wore borrowed clothes, a simple black tunic, and leather pants that couldn't hide the otherworldly changes in her appearance. Her silver-streaked hair caught the torchlight like spun moonbeams, and every wolf who entered immediately dropped their gaze when they saw her violet-tinged eyes. "The Northern Howl has mobilized 800 warriors," General Thalen reported, his scarred face grim. "Their alpha, Cain Frostfang, claims the first wolf is a false omen, a trick by the Southern Throne to legitimize absolute rule. And the Eastern Moors?" Ravak asked from his throne, though his hand never left Liralay's hip, thumb tracing absent circles that sent sparks through her skin. "Silent for now, but their scouts have been spotted at our borders." "The Western Reaches?" "Alpha Vera Nightshade has called for proof." Elder Morena stepped forward. She demands to see the first wolf's power with her own eyes before choosing sides. Ravak's growl rumbled through the hall. "My mate owes proof to no one." "Actually," Liralay said quietly, and every head turned to her the first time she'd spoken in council. "I do." "Liralay." She placed her hand over his, squeezing gently. "They're afraid, Ravak. For 5 centuries, they've told stories of the first wolves, how they could command nature itself, how their power corrupted them, how the packs had to unite to bring them down. Now I appear, bearing the mark, and they're supposed to just accept it? You're supposed to rule them," Captain Aldrich said from his position by the door. "No." Liralay stepped away from the throne, moving to the center of the hall where moonlight streamed through the glass dome above. "The prophecy doesn't say I'll rule. It says I'll either unite or destroy. There's a choice involved, theirs and mine." "What are you suggesting?" Morena asked carefully. "The challenge of silver moons." The words fell into shocked silence. "It hasn't been invoked in 300 years. "Because it's barbaric," Ravak snarled, rising from his throne. 3 trials, each potentially lethal. 3 trials that prove the first wolf's legitimacy beyond question." Liralay met his furious gaze steadily. "If I succeed, even Cain Frostfang can't challenge my claim. If I fail," she shrugged, "then I wasn't the first wolf anyway. You would risk everything on ancient trials? I'd risk everything to prevent a war that would destroy half our people." She returned to him, reaching up to cup his face. "You found me in the dark, believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Let me earn what you've already given me freely." His eyes searched hers, and she felt the moment he understood through their incomplete bond she needed this, needed to prove to herself, not just others, that she was more than the empty one they'd tried to create. The trials require preparation, Elder Morena said slowly. The first is tomorrow's dawn, the hunt of shadows. You must catch the shadow stag that dwells in the thornwood, a creature no wolf has captured in living memory. The second? Lirale asked. The bloodstone claiming at sunset. You must awaken the ancient stone in the ceremonial grounds, something only first wolves could do. And the third? Morena hesitated. The mate's gauntlet. Both you and your chosen mate must survive the Cave of Echoes, where past and future collide. Many who enter never return, lost in visions of what was or what might be. We're not mated yet, Aldrich pointed out. The gauntlet requires a completed bond. Then we complete it tonight. Ravok's declaration sent whispers through the council. The ceremonies, the rituals, the elaborate celebrations, forget them all. Tonight, before witnesses, I claim Lirale Shadowborn as my mate, my queen, my equal in all things. You don't even know me, Lirale whispered, though her wolf was already singing at his words. I know enough. He pulled her against him, uncaring of their audience. I know you spent your imprisonment in darkness and never broke. I know you had the power to kill Kazakh and chose mercy until Morena acted. I know your wolf calls to mine in a language older than words. Ravok. But more than that, he continued, his voice dropping to a growl that made her shiver. I know that every second since I removed that collar, you've been fighting the pull between us, trying to be rational, and trying to protect me from the burden of being mated to the first wolf. She couldn't deny it. The bond between them was like a live wire, growing stronger each hour, and she'd been terrified of what completing it would mean for him. What if the prophecy means I'm destined to destroy everything? She asked. What if mating me dooms you? Then I'll burn with you. His forehead pressed against hers. But I don't think that's what the prophecy means. Unite or destroy. What if it's not about the packs? What if it's about something else entirely? Before she could ask what he meant, a horn sounded from the palace walls, not the war horn from before, but something different. 3 short blasts, then silence. General Thalen was at the window in seconds. Riders approaching under a peace banner. They bear the colors of, that's impossible. What? Ravok demanded. The void touched. From beyond the barrier. Peaks. The hall erupted in shocked voices. The void touched wolves who'd been exposed to dark magic and survived, forever changed, hadn't been seen south of the barriers in decades. They were considered myths by younger wolves, cautionary tales by older ones. Why would they come now? Morena wondered aloud. Lirale knew. She could feel it in her bones, in the way her newly awakened power stirred restlessly. They're here for me. We won't let them, Ravok began. No. She moved toward the doors. We need to hear what they have to say. The great hall fell silent as the void-touched entered. There were 3 of them, and wrong was the only word for how they appeared. Their wolves were partially visible, even in human form, shadows of ears, glimpses of tails, eyes that shifted between human and animal without warning. Their leader, a woman whose hair was white as bone despite her young face, approached with movements that were too fluid, as if she existed slightly outside normal reality. First wolf, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't exist. I am Senna of the Void Touched. We've waited so long for you to emerge. Waited for what? Lirale asked. For the choice that's coming. Senna's eyes, one gray, one black, fixed on her with unsettling intensity. The prophecy you know is incomplete. Unite or destroy, yes, but not the packs. The barrier itself. The barrier has stood for 1,000 years, Elder Morena protested. It keeps the dark things at bay. It keeps us divided, Senna corrected. Light on one side, dark on the other, neither complete. The first wolves knew this. They could walk between both worlds, balance both powers. That's why they had to fall, not because they were corrupt, but because those in power feared the unity they represented. You're saying the prophecy is about healing the split between worlds. Senna stepped closer to Lirale, her mismatched eyes gleaming. But first, you must survive what's coming. The Northern Howl isn't your true enemy. There's something else moving in their ranks, something that feeds on the fear of change. What kind of something? Ravok demanded. the kind that killed the last first wolf 5 centuries ago. Senna's gaze never left Lirelei. The shadow cult still exists, hidden, waiting. They know what you are now. The trials tomorrow aren't just tests, they're hunting grounds. Then we cancel them. No. Lirelei's voice carried new authority. If there are those who would kill me for what I am, better to face them openly than wait for a knife in the dark. Senna smiled, an expression that was eerily beautiful and deeply unsettling. Spoken like a true first wolf. Very well. We offer our aid, such as it is. The void touched will stand witness to your trials. If the shadow cult interferes, they'll face our particular brand of justice. And in return, Lirelei knew there was always a price. When the time comes to choose unite or destroy, remember that some barriers are meant to fall. With that, the void touched melted back into shadows, leaving only the scent of ozone and old magic behind. Well, Lirelei said into the stunned silence. At least we know why Kazakh was so afraid. Ravuk pulled her back against him, his breath hot against her ear. Are you sure about this? The trials, the bond, all of it? She turned in his arms, and for the first time since he'd found her in the dungeon, she smiled, really smiled. I spent years in captivity believing I was nothing. Now I find out I'm something that terrifies kingdoms and cults alike. Yes, I'm sure. The question is, are you? His answer was to kiss her, deep and claiming, right there in front of the entire council. When he pulled back, his eyes were fully wolf. Tonight, he growled. The mating ceremony happens tonight. The ancient mating chamber hadn't been used in 50 years. Carved into the living rock beneath the palace, it thrummed with primal energy that made Lirelei's newly awakened wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. She stood before a pool of moon water collected during full moons and stored in absolute darkness until needed, while Elder Morena painted sacred symbols on her bare skin with silver-infused ink. Each symbol told part of the story: her imprisonment, her awakening, her acceptance of destiny. You understand what happens during the ceremony? Morena asked quietly, her brush never pausing. Our wolves emerge and choose each other. If they accept the bond, we're mated for life. If they reject it, one or both of you dies. Morena's hand steadied on a particularly intricate symbol over Lirelei's heart. It's happened before, when matches were forced for political gain. The wolves know truth even when the human heart lies. My wolf has been screaming for him since he found me. And his for you, if the howling from the preparation chamber is any indication. Morena smiled slightly. I've never seen Ravok so uncontrolled. He nearly killed General Thalen for suggesting you might need more time to recover. Through the walls, Lirelei could indeed hear howling deep, demanding, edged with a need that made her breath catch. Her wolf responded without her permission, a long, haunting call that seemed to vibrate through the stone itself. The answering roar shook dust from the ceiling. He's fighting the change, Morena observed. Holding back until the ceremony. Most males can't manage that level of control this close to their mate during the ritual preparation. Most males aren't the alpha king. No, Morena agreed, adding the final symbol, a crescent moon on Lirelei's forehead. And most females aren't the first wolf reborn. This mating will either stabilize both your powers or create something entirely new. She stepped back, examining her work. You're ready. Lirelei looked at herself in the moonwater's surface. The symbols glowed faintly against her pale skin, and her eyes had gone fully violet, no trace of human brown remaining. Her hair moved as if underwater, the silver streaks pulsing with their own light. I don't look human anymore. You never were fully human. Morena draped a ceremonial robe around her shoulders, white silk so thin it was nearly transparent. Kazakh's greatest crime wasn't imprisoning you. It was convincing you that being different meant being less. The door to the preparation chamber opened, and every torch in the room flared. Lirelei turned to find Ravok in the doorway, and her knees nearly buckled. He wore nothing but ceremonial markings painted in gold across his chest and arms, every line emphasizing the raw power contained in his massive frame. His eyes were pure wolf amber fire that tracked her every movement. But it was the hunger in his expression that stole her breath, a need so visceral she could taste it on the air between them. "Leave us," he commanded, never looking away from Lirelei. "The ceremony requires witnesses," Morena began. "The witnesses can watch from behind the barrier." His voice had dropped to pure growl. "My control has limits, Elder, and we're about to exceed them." Morena bowed and retreated quickly. As her footsteps faded, Lirelei heard the grinding of stone, the ancient barrier sliding into place. They were alone now, sealed in the chamber with only moonwater and magic between them. "Are you afraid?" Ravok asked, staying by the door as if he didn't trust himself to come closer. "Terrified," Lirelei admitted. "Not of you, of what I'm becoming, of what we're about to create together." The void touched said the shadow cult killed the last first wolf. 500 years ago. What if they're right? What if accepting this power, completing this bond, puts a target on both our backs? Lirelei let the ceremonial robe fall, standing before him in nothing but moonlight and sacred symbols. "Then we face it together, or not at all." The last thread of his control snapped. Ravok crossed the chamber in a blur of motion, catching her against him with barely restrained violence. His mouth crashed into hers, all teeth and desperate hunger, while his hands mapped every symbol Morena had painted, as if memorizing the story of her transformation. "Mine," he snarled against her throat, and she felt his wolf rising, demanding release. "Prove it," she challenged, her own wolf surging forward. The change rippled through them simultaneously, bones cracking, reshaping, fur sprouting in waves of midnight black and silver gray. But something was different this time, their transformations synchronized, each shift and change matching perfectly, as if choreographed by ancient instinct. When it finished, two massive wolves stood in the chamber, his gray form still huge but dwarfed by her midnight magnificence. For a moment, they simply circled each other, wolves evaluating, testing, and learning. Then Lirelei did something that made every witness behind the barrier gasp. She bared her throat to him. The first wolf, submitting to her chosen mate. But Ravok didn't immediately accept the gesture. Instead, his massive head lowered until his throat was equally exposed to her. Mutual submission, mutual claiming, equals in every way. They struck simultaneously, teeth sinking deep into offered flesh. The moment their blood mixed, the chamber exploded with light. Power crashed through them, not just the mating bond snapping into place, but something far older. The symbols on their skin blazed through their fur, visible even in wolf form. The moonwater pool began to boil, sending up clouds of silver steam. Through the bond, Lirelei felt everything: Ravok's memories, his emotions, his absolute certainty that she was worth any price. And he felt hers: the years of darkness, the pain of believing she was nothing, and the wild joy of discovering her truth. But there was something else, something neither expected. Their powers weren't just combining, they were evolving. Where Lirelei commanded nature and ancient magic, and Ravok ruled through strength and dominance, together they created something new. She could feel it building between them, a force that could reshape reality itself. When they finally released each other, the mate marks that appeared were unlike any in recorded history. Not simple scars, but living tattoos that shifted and moved his bearing, her crescent moon wrapped in thorns, hers displaying his crown wreathed in shadows. They shifted back to human form, and Lirelei gasped at the changes. Ravok's eyes now held flecks of violet among the amber. Her own reflected hints of his golden fire. They were literally becoming part of each other. "The bond," she whispered, pressing her hand to his chest where his heart thundered. "It's not just emotional. We're actually merging," he finished, his hand covering hers. "I can feel your power like a second heartbeat, and I can feel yours." She concentrated, and shadows gathered around her fingers, his ability, now hers. A slow clap echoed from behind the barrier. They spun to find someone who shouldn't be there, a figure in black robes standing where the witnesses should be, but weren't. The barrier that should have been solid stone was dissolved like mist. "Magnificent," the figure said, pushing back his hood to reveal a face that was unnaturally perfect, too flawless, like a sculpture given life. The first successful first wolf mating in 5 centuries. "The Shadow Cult thanks you for the demonstration. Where are the witnesses?" Ravok demanded, already moving to shield Lirelei. Sleeping. Don't worry, we need them alive to spread the news of what happened here. The man's smile was razor sharp. You see, every first wolf before you made the same mistake. They hid their matings, kept them private. But you've given us exactly what we needed, proof that the first wolf has returned and mated. You want war, Lirelai said, understanding flooding through her. We want chaos. And now, with the northern howl already marching and this news about to spread, we'll have it. He pulled something from his robes, a crystal that pulsed with sickly green light. But first, a gift from the cult. He shattered the crystal against the floor. Black smoke erupted from the shards, forming into shapes wolves, but wrong, corrupted, their eyes bleeding green fire. Shadow wolves, creatures of pure dark magic that shouldn't exist in the physical world. Survive this, if you can, the cultist said, already fading into darkness. The trials tomorrow will be even more entertaining. The shadow wolves attacked. Blood painted the ceremonial chamber walls, some of it void black from the creatures they fought, most of it crimson from their own wounds. Lirelai's claws tore through another shadow wolf, but it reformed instantly, its green fire eyes mocking her efforts. Beside her, Ravok battled 3 at once, his massive frame already bearing dozens of wounds that weren't healing as they should. Physical attacks don't work, she gasped, dodging snapping jaws that passed through her shoulder like ice water, leaving numbness in their wake. The moon water, Ravok growled, gesturing to the still-boiling pool. Sacred water might. A shadow wolf lunged through his chest. Ravok roared in agony, dropping to one knee as cold spread through his body. Lirelai felt his pain through their new bond, not physical but spiritual, as if the shadows were eating at his very essence. No, power erupted from her without conscious thought. Not her old nature magic, not his shadow manipulation, but something born from their union. Silver-violet light exploded outward, and the shadow wolves recoiled, their forms flickering. Together, she realized, we have to use our merged power together. She grabbed Ravok's hand, and instantly the light intensified. He understood immediately, adding his will to hers. The power that flooded between them was intoxicating raw creation and controlled destruction in perfect balance. The shadow wolves tried to flee, but the combined energy consumed them, burning away the corrupt magic that gave them form. In seconds, the chamber was clear except for scorch marks on the stone and the lingering scent of dark magic. The witnesses, Ravok said immediately, pulling Lirelai toward the dissolved barrier. They found them in the observation chamber, Morena, Thalen, Aldrich, and 6 other pack leaders, all unconscious but breathing. Morena stirred first as Lirelai touched her forehead, violet light seeping into the elder's skin. What happened? Morena struggled to sit up. The shadow cult was here. Lirelai helped steady her. They were waiting for us to complete the bond. Impossible. These chambers are warded against normal magic, Ravok said grimly. Not against whatever the cult has become. They wanted witnesses left alive. They want word of our mating to spread. To incite a chaos before tomorrow's trials, Lirelai added. If the northern howl hears the first wolf has mated the southern king, a horn cut through her words, not from the palace walls but from the city below. Then another, and another. Soon, dozens of horns were sounding across the capital. General Thalen stumbled to the window, still shaking off the cult's sleeping spell. Fires in the merchant quarter, fighting in the streets. The news has already spread somehow. Not somehow, Captain Aldrich said, pointing to the wall where words were burned into the stone in that same sickly green fire. The false wolf has mated the tyrant king. Let all true wolves rise against this abomination. They're framing us for their own violence. Morena breathed. Making it look like your mating caused this chaos. We need to get to the city, Lirelai said, but Ravok caught her arm. That's what they want us in the open, vulnerable. You have the trials at dawn. People are dying. Because of us. People are dying because of the cult. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. If you fail the trials tomorrow, if you can't prove you're the true first wolf, this violence becomes a civil war. She knew he was right, but every scream from the city below felt like claws on her soul. Through their bond, She felt his equal anguish, his need to protect his people, warring with the necessity of keeping her safe for tomorrow. There might be another way, Elder Morena said slowly. The dream walking. That's a myth, Thalen protested. No. Morena looked at Lirelei with something like hope. It's a first wolf ability. You could project your consciousness across the city, appear to multiple locations at once, calm the violence without leaving the palace. I don't know how. I do. Morena moved to the moonwater pool. My grandmother saw the last first wolf do it, before the fall. She left records. It's dangerous, Ravok said immediately. If her consciousness gets lost, then you anchor me. Lirelei gripped his hand. The mate bond is strong enough now. You can pull me back if needed. Before he could protest further, she was already following Morena to the pool. The elder withdrew a vial from her robes, something that looked like liquid starlight. Drink this, then enter the pool while it's still charged with your mating energy. Let your wolf guide you. Lirelei downed the vial in one swallow. It tasted like moonlight and memories, burning cold down her throat. The moment she stepped into the pool, the world exploded into fragments. She was everywhere and nowhere. 1,000 views of the city flooded her mind, wolves fighting in the streets, humans barricading their doors, children crying in terror. But she could also feel the threads of emotion driving it all. Fear, anger, confusion, and underneath, the cult's poisonous influence spreading like ink in water. Focus, Ravok's voice through their bond, steady as stone, one place at a time. She concentrated on the worst of the fighting, the main market square where two factions of wolves were tearing each other apart. Her consciousness dove down, and suddenly she stood in the middle of the battle, her form translucent and glowing with silver-violet light. Enough! Her voice carried the full weight of the first wolf's authority, and every wolf froze mid-attack. You're not real, someone snarled. Another cult trick. She reached out and touched the speaker, and he gasped as power flooded through him, not harmful but healing, closing the gashes on his muzzle. I am Lirelei Shadowborn, the first wolf reborn, mate to your king. The violence you're committing isn't your will, it's the shadow cult's manipulation. Feel the taint in your rage. See how it tastes of false fire. As wolves began to look at each other with dawning horror, she moved to another location, the temple district, where fires raged. This time, her projected form drew water from the air itself, dousing flames with impossible rain that sparkled with her power. Location after location, she appeared, spoke, healed, protected. But with each projection, she felt herself spreading thinner, her consciousness fragmenting. Come back, Ravok commanded. You're fading. But there was one more place she could feel it, a concentration of terror that dwarfed all others. An orphanage on the city's edge where shadow wolves had cornered dozens of children. She manifested there with the last of her strength, placing herself between the shadows and the children. But she was too weak, her form barely visible. You cannot protect them, false wolf. A cultist emerged from the shadows, bearing that same disturbing perfection. You're barely here at all. He was right. She was failing, her consciousness scattering like mist. The children behind her screamed as shadow wolves advanced. Then she felt Ravok's power flooding through their bond, not pulling her back but pushing forward, joining her. His form materialized beside hers, just as translucent but burning with golden fire. You made one mistake, he told the cultist. You let us complete the mate bond first. Together they were more than the sum of their parts. Their combined projection solidified, becoming temporarily physical. Lirelei's hand found Ravok's, and power erupted, not the raw force from the chamber, but controlled, precise, surgical. Every shadow wolf in the orphanage disintegrated. The cultist tried to flee, but Lirelei's power held him fast while Ravok's tore through his magical defenses. Who leads the shadow cult? Ravok demanded. The cultist laughed, blood running from his eerily pristine features. Someone you trust, someone close. Someone who's been waiting 5 centuries for the first wolf to return. His body began dissolving into shadow. The trials tomorrow aren't the test, they're the trap. But you'll walk into them anyway, won't you? Because that's what heroes do. He vanished, leaving only the echo of mocking laughter. Lirelei felt her projection failing, her consciousness snapping back toward her body like a released rubber band. The last thing she saw was the children safe, the shadows gone, the city's violence finally calming. She gasped back to awareness in the moonwater pool, Ravok's arms around her, his voice urgent in her ear. "Never do that again. I felt you almost scatter completely." "But it worked," she said weakly. "The city?" "Calm for now," Morena reported, monitoring through scrying crystals. "Your appearance everywhere simultaneously convinced most that you're truly the first wolf. But, the northern howl has accelerated their march. They'll be here by dawn, just in time for the trials." Lirelei laughed, exhausted and slightly hysterical. "Of course they will. You need rest," Ravok said, lifting her from the pool. "I need answers. Someone we trust is leading the cult. Someone who's been close to the throne, waiting." She met each council member's eyes. "One of you wants me dead." The silence that followed was deafening. "Then we'll make them reveal themselves," Ravok said grimly. "During tomorrow's trials, they'll have to make their move. And when they do, Lirelei finished, "we'll be ready." But even as she spoke the words, she wondered if anything could truly prepare them for facing an enemy who'd waited 500 years for revenge. Dawn came like a blade across the sky, sharp and red. Lirelei stood at the edge of the thornwood, where ancient trees twisted into impossible shapes and morning mist clung to everything like burial shrouds. Behind her, thousands had gathered, not just the palace wolves but citizens, rival packs, and at the forest's far edge, the Northern Howl's warriors in battle formation. "The rules are simple," Elder Morena announced, her voice carrying across the field. "Enter the Thornwood, find the Shadow Stag, return with proof of capture before the sun reaches its zenith. No weapons permitted, except claws and cunning. And if she fails?" Cain Frostfang's voice boomed from the northern contingent. The alpha was massive, even from a distance, white-furred in his half-form with eyes like frozen lakes. "Then she's not the first wolf," Morena replied simply. Ravok stood beside Lirelei, his hand on her neck where their mate mark pulsed with warmth. Through their bond, she felt his barely controlled rage at having to let her face this alone. "The Shadow Stag isn't just a creature," he murmured for her ears only. "Legend says it's a fragment of the first darkness, before the moon gave us form. It'll try to break your mind before your body. Then it's fortunate my mind was already broken and remade." She turned to kiss him, quick but fierce, tasting his fear and love in equal measure. "Watch for the traitor. They'll make their move when I'm vulnerable." "Lirelei," he caught her hand as she turned toward the forest. "Come back to me. Always." She shifted as she ran, her massive black form diving into the thornwood's embrace. The moment she passed the tree line, the world changed. Sounds muffled, colors shifted, and the very air grew thick as honey. This wasn't just a forest, it was a living maze that fed on those who entered. The scent hit her immediately. Shadow and starlight, terror and beauty combined. The Shadow Stag had been here recently, its trail burning silver through her enhanced senses. But following it was like chasing smoke. The trail split, reformed, doubled back on itself, impossibly. "Think," she told herself, forcing her wolf's instincts to slow. "It's not about speed or strength. It's about understanding." She closed her eyes, letting other senses take over. The thornwood had its own rhythm, a heartbeat in the earth, a whisper in the wind. And underneath it all, something that didn't belong. A void in the pattern where something moved that shouldn't exist. Her eyes snapped open. The Shadow Stag wasn't leaving a trail to follow, it was creating false ones. The real creature was in the spaces between, the moments where reality bent. Lirelei stopped running. Instead, she sat perfectly still in a clearing where 7 paths diverged, waiting, listening, feeling for the wrongness that marked something existing outside natural law. There a flicker at the corner of her vision. She didn't turn, didn't react. The Shadow Stag was testing her, seeing if she'd chase another false trail. Minutes passed, an hour. The sun climbed higher, and she heard distant howls of confusion from those watching. Why wasn't their first wolf hunting? Because hunting was what everyone before had tried, and everyone before had failed. The flicker came closer, curious now. The shadow stag materialized partially antlers of pure darkness crowned with stars, eyes that held the depth of the void, a body that shifted between solid and smoke. "You're not prey," Lirelei said softly, not moving from her seated position. "You're a guardian, aren't you? A test not of strength but of wisdom." The stag stepped fully into reality, its presence making the air crack like ice. When it spoke, its voice was the space between echoes. 500 years since someone understood. The others came with violence, with pride, with the certainty they could conquer darkness itself. Darkness isn't meant to be conquered. It's meant to be balanced with light. The first wolves knew this. Before the split, before the barrier, before fear divided the world. The stag moved closer, its breath misting silver in the morning air. "But you're not just first wolf reborn. You're something new. I can smell it, the union of opposites, the marriage of shadow and light. My mate has given you what no first wolf possessed before, the ability to bridge both worlds." The stag lowered its magnificent head until its star-crowned antlers were level with her eyes. "The question is, will you use it to unite or destroy?" "That's what everyone keeps asking. But what if the answer is both?" The stag went perfectly still. "Explain. Unite what should never have been separated. Destroy the barriers that keep us divided and afraid." Lirelei finally stood, moving slowly toward the creature. The void touched see it. The shadow cult fears it. The real prophecy isn't about choosing between unity or destruction, it's about destroying the old to unite the new. "And if you're wrong, if this path leads to chaos, then I'll face the consequences. But I won't let fear keep our world fractured." The shadow stag studied her for a long moment. Then it did something unprecedented. It laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "You're either the wisest wolf in centuries, or the most dangerous." It moved closer, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from its form. "Take what you need, first wolf, but know that accepting my mark means accepting the burden of change itself. I accepted that when I let Ravok remove my wansprise of a collar." The stag pressed its forehead to hers, and cold beyond description flooded through her. Not painful, but transformative, as if every cell in her body was being rewritten with new possibilities. When it pulled back, a mark had appeared on her forehead, a silver star that pulsed with its own light. "The proof you need," the stag said, already beginning to fade. "But more than that, the key to what's coming. When the barrier falls, when the worlds collide, that mark will remember this moment. Remember that change, however terrifying, is the only path to growth." Wait when the barrier falls? But the shadow stag was gone, leaving only the echo of its words and the burning cold of its mark. Lirelei ran back through the thornwood, finding it strangely cooperative now. Paths straightening, shadows parting, the maze becoming a garden. She burst from the tree line to find chaos. The northern howl had advanced, surrounding the ceremonial grounds. Cain Frostfang stood in challenge, in position, his warriors at his back. But it was the figure beside him that made Lirelei's blood freeze. General Thalen, Ravok's most trusted advisor, the scarred warrior who'd served the throne for 30 years, stood with the enemy. "Ah, she returns," Thalen said, his familiar voice now carrying an edge of something ancient and wrong. "And bearing the stag's mark. How wonderful. The first trial is complete. You," Ravok snarled, held back only by Captain Aldrich and 6 guards. "You're the Shadow Cult's leader." "Leader? No." Thalen's scarred face shifted, revealing something else underneath that same unnaturally flawless quality the other cultist had possessed. "I'm merely the herald, the one who's been preparing the way for 5 centuries, moving from body to body, waiting for the first wolf to return." "Why?" Lirelei demanded, stalking forward despite the weapons pointed at her. "Because the last first wolf destroyed everything I loved." Thalen's borrowed face twisted with ancient rage. "She chose unity, chose to tear down the barrier, and the resulting chaos killed thousands. My family, my pack, my entire world gone because one wolf thought she knew better than centuries of tradition. So you killed her. We stopped her before she could finish what she started. But the damage was done. The barrier weakened, the void touched created. the world forever scarred. He gestured to the mark on Liralay's forehead. And now you bear the same delusion, the same destructive certainty that change is worth any cost. The second trial, Cain Frostfang interrupted, his frozen eyes fixed on Liralay. If she's truly the first wolf, let her awaken the bloodstone. Let her prove her power before we discuss philosophy. Liralay felt the trap closing. The bloodstone ceremony was meant to be at sunset, with time to prepare, to recover. But Thalen had orchestrated this perfectly. She was exhausted from the stag's marking, surrounded by enemies, with no time to ready herself. Unless, Thalen said with mock concern, she needs to rest first. Perhaps the first wolf isn't as powerful as legends claim? Bring the stone, Liralay commanded, her voice carrying despite her exhaustion. The bloodstone was massive, a crimson crystal the size of a person, carried on an ancient platform by 20 wolves. It had sat dormant in the ceremonial grounds for 500 years, waiting for a first wolf's touch to bring it back to life. Many had tried. All had failed. As they set it in the circle's center, Liralay felt Ravok's presence through their bond, his strength, his faith, his love flowing into her like a river. She wasn't alone. She'd never be alone again. She approached the stone, aware of thousands of eyes upon her. The morning sun made the crystal look like frozen blood, beautiful and terrible. The moment her hand touched its surface, pain exploded through her. Not physical pain, spiritual. The bloodstone was testing her, tearing through her, memories, her fears, her doubts. It showed her every moment of weakness, every time she'd believed she was nothing, every second of those years below. You are empty, the stone whispered in her mind. You are useless. You are nothing. I was, she whispered back, but I became something more. She pushed back with her own truth the moment Ravok found her. The first time her wolf emerged, the completion of their mate bond, the shadow stag's acceptance. But more than that, she showed the stone her vision. A world without barriers, without the artificial divisions between light and dark, where wolves could be whole instead of fractured. The bloodstone pulsed once, twice then erupted in crimson light that painted the entire field red. But the light didn't stop there. It spread outward, racing across the ground in veins of power, connecting to every wolf present. For a moment, they were all connected. Northern howl, southern pack, even the void touched observers. They felt each other's fears, hopes, and dreams. The artificial hatred Thalen had cultivated crumbled in the face of shared understanding. No, Thalen roared, his form shifting, revealing the shadow creature beneath the stolen flesh. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. Liralay kept her hand on the stone, even as it burned her palm. You've been feeding the division, keeping us weak and afraid, because united we're strong enough to face what's really coming. What's coming? Cain Frostfang demanded. The barrier isn't just weakening, Liralay said, the bloodstone showing her visions of the future. It's dying. Within a year, maybe less, it'll fall completely. And when it does, we either stand together or we all perish. Lies! Thalen lunged for her, shadow claws extended. Ravok intercepted him, their bodies colliding with the force of avalanches. They fought with the fury of betrayal, 30 years of friendship twisted into this moment of truth. The final trial, someone shouted. The mate's gauntlet. It's not sunset, Morena protested. The trials were corrupted from the start, Liralay said, pulling her burned hand from the bloodstone, which now pulsed with steady crimson light. If Thalen wants to end this, let it be now. The Cave of Echoes opened like a wound in the hillside, a natural formation that preceded even the first wolves, where time itself grew thin. Legend said those who entered saw all possible futures, all potential pasts, and most went mad from the visions. Liralay and Ravok moved toward it together, hands clasped, mate marks burning with shared power. Together, Ravok said, breaking from his battle with Thalen to stand beside her. Together, she agreed. But as they approached the cave, Thalen laughed a sound like breaking glass. You think the cave is your trial? Oh, young wolves, the cave is merely the stage. Your trial. His form exploded into pure shadow, racing past them into the darkness, is me. They, followed without hesitation, hands clasped, mate marks burning with shared power. The cave swallowed them whole. Inside was impossible larger than outside, filled with crystals that showed not reflections but realities. Lirelei saw herself in thousands of variations, versions where she never left the dungeon, where Ravok never found her, where the collar was never removed. Ravok saw similar visions, himself as tyrant, as corpse, as the broken king of a shattered realm. Every choice creates a new path. Thalen's voice echoed from everywhere. Look at all the worlds where you fail, where your love destroys everything. The visions pressed closer, becoming real. Lirelei felt herself splitting, experiencing every failure simultaneously. Beside her, Ravok growled in pain as alternate versions of himself attacked Shadow Ravok's, convinced she was the enemy. This is the truth of the first wolves. Thalen materialized between them, forcing them apart. Too much power, too many possibilities. They saw everything that could be, and went mad from the weight of infinite choice. No, Lirelei gasped, fighting through the visions. They went mad from facing it alone. She reached for Ravok through their bond, not physically but spiritually. Their mate marks flared, and suddenly the visions changed. Now she saw not just her failures but their triumphs, worlds where they united the packs, where they healed the void touched, where they brought balance to a fractured realm. Every choice has consequences, she said, standing straighter. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't choose. Together, Ravok added, his hand finding hers despite Thalen's shadows. We face them together. Their combined power erupted outward, not destroying the visions but accepting them. Every possibility, every path, every potential future acknowledged and released. The cave itself seemed to sigh, its crystalline walls singing a note that hadn't been heard in 500 years. Impossible, Thalen whispered, his shadow form flickering. You forgot something, Lirelei said, advancing on him with Ravok at her side. The last first wolf did face this alone, but I have something she didn't. A mate who's my equal, who shares my burden, who makes me stronger than any first wolf before. And I have something no Alpha King possessed, Ravok added. A queen who shows me that strength isn't about domination but about knowing when to yield, when to unite, when to change. Their power crashed into Thalen like a tide, not violent but inexorable, washing away the shadows he'd carried for 5 centuries. His stolen form crumbled, revealing the withered creature beneath, barely alive, sustained only by hate and fear. The barrier will fall, he gasped with his last breath. The darkness will come, and you'll learn what the first wolves truly knew: some things are better left divided. He dissolved into mist, then nothing, leaving only silence in the cave. They emerged to find the sun at its zenith, the trials complete. The assembled wolves, northern, southern, eastern, western, all stood witness to what had happened. The Bloodstone's light had shown them everything, shared the visions from the cave. Cain Frostfang was the first to kneel, his massive white form bowing low. The prophecy is fulfilled. The first wolf has returned, not to rule but to unite. One by one, others followed. Not in submission, but in recognition she had passed the tests, faced the shadow cult, proven herself worthy. Rise, Lirelei commanded, her voice carrying new authority. All of you rise. We don't have time for ceremonies. The barrier is weakening. The real work begins now. What work? Elder Morena asked. Lirelei looked at Ravok, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. Preparing for the world that comes next. United, or not at all. The silver star on her forehead pulsed with the Shadow Stag's gift, showing her glimpses of the future darkness and light swirling together. The void touched, standing alongside normal wolves, the barrier dissolving like morning mist. Change was coming, whether they wanted it or not. But for the first time in 500 years, they would face it together. 3 months later, the barrier fell at dawn. Lirelei stood at the convergence point, where the ancient wall of pure energy had separated the worlds for a millennium. Beside her, Ravok watched with grim satisfaction as the last of the ethereal structure dissolved into sparkles of fading light. Behind them, the united packs waited not in fear but in readiness. The Northern Howl's warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with the Southern Guard. The void touched had taught them all how to channel the darker energies without losing themselves. Even the human settlements had been prepared, their people ready for a world where magic would no longer be contained. "Are you ready for this?" Ravok asked, his hand finding hers. Lyralee's. Mate Mark pulsed with warmth, their bond stronger than ever after 3 months of shared leadership, shared power, and shared purpose. Her belly had just begun to show the slightest curve their cubs, the first offspring of a mated first wolf pair in recorded history. "I was born ready," she said, then laughed at the truth of it. "I just spent 20 years not knowing it." The last of the barrier vanished, and the two worlds so long separated rushed together. It wasn't the catastrophe Thalen had predicted. It wasn't the immediate paradise some had hoped for. It was something more complex, more real, two halves of a whole finally reunited, difficult and beautiful and absolutely necessary. Creatures of shadow and light mingled on the field before them. Ancient magics, long dormant, stirred to life. The world grew larger, stranger, more dangerous but also more wonderful. "My queen," Ravok murmured, pulling her against him as they watched their united people step forward to greet what came through the fallen barrier. "My mate, my first wolf, my king," she replied, turning to kiss him as the sun rose on their new world. "My anchor, my shadow and strength." The silver star on her forehead, the shadow stag's mark, glowed with approval. She had chosen to unite by destroying the old divisions. And in doing so, Lyralee Shadowborn, once called empty and useless, had become exactly what the prophecy promised, not just the first wolf reborn, but the last first wolf, the one who would ensure no wolf would ever again have to stand alone in the darkness. The real story of building this new, unified world was just beginning, but she wouldn't face it alone. Never again would any of them face their darkness alone.